Defunding Planned Parenthood. The House once again votes to strip the abortion providers federal funds. We'll tell you what comes next. Synod synopsis. As the gathering of bishops wraps up, we get an update from Rome. He's in. Wisconsin Congressman Paul Ryan jumps in the race for Speaker of the House. American heroes. Soldiers who rescued precious works of art during World War II win Congress's highest honor. Those stories and more on Ewtn News Nightly for Friday, October 23rd, 2015. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Jason Calvi, in for Brian Patrick with your news now. Major efforts to defund Planned Parenthood move forward today. Texas Governor Greg Abbott orders state health officials to investigate Planned Parenthood clinics. Investigators served subpoenas at clinics across the state, asking for patient health records and other documents. Catherine Zeltner has more.
Jason, investigators visited clinics in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. The subpoena comes as Texas officials move to stop Medicaid funding to the organization. It also comes as a new undercover Planned Parenthood video is released.
We win this election when we stand up boldly and say, no, you're not going to cut or defund Planned Parenthood. You're going to put more money into Planned Parenthood.
That's why we have to defend Planned Parenthood.
As some politicians pander to Planned Parenthood today, others fight to take the abortion provider down.
But I don't,
But the truth is that some might want to do it to increase their revenues, and we can't stop them.
This is the latest undercover video, obtained and released by GotNews.com's editor-in-chief Charles Johnson. Johnson claims this Planned Parenthood national representative admits the abortion provider can't stop affiliates from accepting cash for aborted baby parts. It contradicts Planned Parenthood's claim the group won't accept money for aborted parts. The man behind the undercover videos, David Daleiden, tells Ewtn News Nightly, these videos have only ever been released previously to Congress, based on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee's subpoena. Only Charles knows the exact source of the material he, Got News, and the hacker put out. With the latest video release, House representatives pass a reconciliation bill that defunds Planned Parenthood for 1 year. A provision moves those taxpayer dollars to other healthcare centers. That budget process only requires 51 votes to pass the Senate instead of the typical 60 needed to stop a filibuster. The Obama administration says the bill will be vetoed if it reaches the president's desk. Jason?
Thank you. And to talk about that, we're joined by Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, a group committed to electing pro-life politicians. Marjorie, can you break down this reconciliation bill for us?
Yeah, well, I would just say first, if you haven't been paying attention so far and you care about the pro-life cause, this is an enormous day, an enormous step forward. The passage of the reconciliation bill in the House of Representatives was a very big step. It didn't stop with the CR. It didn't stop with all the measures that came before that. It means that this will move on to the Senate. And when it moves on to the Senate, we expect and hope and pray, and we're lobbying our senators to stay unified and vote for the same reconciliation bill so that it then can go to the president. That's where we want to see clarity.
But it will be vetoed. He will veto it. So what's the point?
Well, the point is clarity. That is the gift. What we have not seen in every year since Planned Parenthood was funded by the government, which has been about 40 years, no oversight, no questions, no clarity about who they are. 1 in 8 women who enter a Planned Parenthood clinic will get an abortion. We provide 1/3 of their funding. And with all the things that we know that have been going on in all of these videos and all the clinics across the country, we are gaining not just a galvanization point of the pro-life movement, we are winning the hearts and minds of the American people, and that is why this is moving so quickly and so consistently towards defunding. And then when the presidential candidates who are all lined up to talk about this is a winning place. That means whoever sits in that Oval Office in 2017 gets out their pen, they're going to sign that bill, and we can at least put this part of the debate to rest.
Well, today is interesting because Speaker Boehner appointed the Republicans to the special committee that's going to be investigating Planned Parenthood. What do you hope will come from this committee?
Now, this is another part of a giant step forward. I mean, I really look at this committee that I've worked, and Susan B. Anthony List, we've worked very hard at at kind of on the inside and looking at who might be a powerful asset to the committee, each one of them. It's a giant step forward because I really look at it, and we should all, as the Watergate of the pro-life movement. It really is. Let's dig down. Let's actually look and see what's happening in these clinics. The staffing, meaning the members on this select committee, are a powerful combination of people. They have medical backgrounds, scientific backgrounds, great advocacy with some of the best women that we've helped elect on that committee behind the leadership of Marsha Blackburn. It's going to be powerful and consistent, and it will put education out there and conversation and debate, especially within the presidential debate, out there so that we know what we're considering when we're considering funding Planned Parenthood, but even beyond, because we're looking at the baby, and that's where we need to be.
Well, thank you so much for updating us on this, and I'm sure we'll bring you back many times to talk about this as we move forward. Thank you, Marjorie.
I look forward to it.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it. Thank you. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. We now know the name of the U.S. commando killed in a raid against ISIS. Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler was a 39-year-old Oklahoma native. He was assigned to the U.S. Army Special Ops Command in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Defense Department says he was shot yesterday as U.S. and Iraqi forces raided a compound in Iraq, freeing about 70 Iraqi prisoners. And another Democratic candidate for president drops out. There won't be a President Lincoln Chafee.
But after much thought, I have decided to end my campaign for the president today. Thank you.
The former Rhode Island governor's announcement comes just days after Jim Webb ended his candidacy, I should say, and Vice President Joe Biden said he won't seek the Democratic nomination. That leaves three main contenders in the Democratic race. Police say another church has been set on fire in the St. Louis area, making it the 7th since such blaze in 2 weeks. Police say someone ignited the rectory doors of the Shrine of St. Joseph yesterday. The church was empty and no one was injured. Churches of various denominations have been damaged since October 8th. Until this latest fire, all were within a few miles of each other in mostly black neighborhoods. A bus crash in France kills at least 43 people. Retirees on a day trip were riding the bus in French wine country. A truck driver lost control and hit the bus. Both vehicles caught fire. Only 8 people escaped. 4 of them are in serious condition. A suicide bombing in Nigeria has killed 27 people and wounded 96 during an inauguration of a mosque this afternoon. This follows another bombing during pre-dawn prayers this morning. Boko Haram is suspected in this morning's bombing that killed at least 18 people. It happened at a crowded mosque. Boko Haram has pledged allegiance to ISIS. They're trying to recreate an Islamic caliphate in West Africa. Police in Sweden say a school was attacked, and that attack was motivated by race. An attacker stabbed and killed a teacher and a student. Police then shot and killed the attacker. Most of the students at the school were foreign-born. Pope Francis creates a new Vatican office dedicated to Catholic laity and families. The new office combines 3 departments to highlight the role of families in the Catholic Church. It's been in the works for 2 years now as part of Francis's Vatican reform. The announcement comes as the Holy Father and bishops around the world wrap up the 3-week Synod on the Family in Rome. Edward Penton is the National Catholic Register's Rome correspondent. Ed, why is the Pope creating this new office?
Well, this has been on the cards really since the papal election 2 years ago, and it's really part of the general reform of the Curia. It's been advised by the group of 9 cardinals advising the Pope on reform of the Curia, and the general idea is really to centralize these 3 dicasteries that were separated before, because they're all rather similar together, and to try and sort of harmonize what they do together, make things a bit more efficient. But also there's an important element here symbolically in a way, because it's giving precedence to the laity. It's giving them a prominent role in the Vatican. In the past they've been a pontifical council on their own. Now they're going to be part of a congregation, which is a bigger dicastery and more important. So it's to emphasize really the importance of the laity, coming from, of course, from the Second Vatican Council, which tried to give more prominence to the laity. So it's all part of that.
And then what will they actually do? What will the office do?
Well, the main role of these dicasteries is really as an advisory body to the Pope to help him in governing the Church, and rather like a ministry in a government, it's there to help create sort of documents and instructions for the Church, the universal Church, and sort of help in that sense. There's a sort of coordinating role, a central coordinating role for all of these issues related to the family, laity, and life. And it's important to point out that the Pontifical Academy for Life, it's not being merged into it as such, but it's going to retain its autonomy, but be part of it. So it'll still remain a certain amount of influence there, I think.
And the bishops and cardinals of the Synod are looking at a document. Is that document ready for a vote already?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. They're going to vote on it tomorrow morning. It's the final report of these 3 weeks of the Synod. And they've been tabling, putting their input into it. I've heard from one synod father who's considered to be sort of on the orthodox side that there's some concerns about the document, but they've given their input to the commission that's drafting it, and so there's hope that those inputs will be taken account of. But we won't know until tomorrow. We've been told we're going to have some substantial material coming out at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Whether that's the final report, we don't know, because we don't know if the Pope really wants it published. But we'll find out about that tomorrow, and hopefully there'll be some, if not the document itself, then some good summaries of it.
And I'm sure you'll keep us up to date with what happens tomorrow. Ed Penton from the National Catholic Register, thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
And the Western Hemisphere's strongest hurricane ever recorded is on a path to Mexico's Pacific coast. With winds near 200 miles per hour, the U.S. National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Patricia is a Category 5 storm. Forecasters are predicting landfall today. People living in coastal resort and fishing villages have boarded up homes, while some residents have evacuated. And as a result, heavy rain may be dumped on Texas. Forecasters say parts of the state could be pounded with 5 to 8 inches of rain. Some areas could get a foot. Flash flood watches are posted for the Texas Hill Country and along the I-35 corridor from Austin to Dallas. Coming up, a Catholic who saved precious works of art is one of hundreds of monuments men receiving a top U.S. honor. And we'll dive deeper into the Synod of Bishops gathering to talk about important family issues. Today is the feast of St. John of Capistrano. Ordained a Franciscan priest, he converted many through his homilies. He died in 1456. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Jason Calvi, in for Brian Patrick. Representative Paul Ryan says he will seek the job of Speaker of the House. In a letter to fellow Republicans, he says the party has the chance to start with a clean slate and to rebuild what has been lost. Ryan's announcement came after he received support from 3 major caucuses within the GOP, including the hardline Freedom Caucus. He's very likely he will win the elections next week. Melissa Brownstein is a contributor at The Federalist and a former U.S. Department of State speechwriter. Melissa, Paul Ryan has brought to the attention this issue of work-family balance. What do you make of that?
I think it's really important. This is something that has long been an issue that women have discussed, and I think it's really great that Paul Ryan has now involved fathers very actively in this conversation.
But does this change the stereotype that women are the ones who stay at home and take care of the kids?
Hopefully. I mean, the great thing here is that Paul Ryan is feeling free to speak up and say that it's very important to him to be involved in his children's lives and to really be there and actively participating, that he wants to be an active father, and I think the more fathers out there feel comfortable saying something like that, the better we all are, in a better position we're all in.
And his children are quite young. Why is it so important that those fathers stay at home or take care, have such an active role in their children's lives?
There are so many studies that have been done in recent years that show that it's so important to have both parents actively involved, and fathers bring different things to the table than mothers do. I think it's so important that every child have the opportunity to get the things, the love and support and the protection, all the things that a father can offer, and not to feel like that's cut off because of a job.
And putting the children, I mean, this decision he showed, I'm putting my children and family first.
Yes.
I mean, it took him a long time to get to yes on this.
Yes, yeah. So I think it shows that he really is prioritizing his family. I think that's something that's very admirable.
And I guess also an example, not only, but an example to all of us as fathers.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully more fathers will now feel free to speak up and say this is a priority and they want to be doing this for their families, yes.
And should Americans kind of get on board and support his decision? I mean, it took him a while. He was criticized for not jumping in, but he said, I want to put my family first.
Well, I think whenever you're taking on such a big job, you should always give careful consideration. You shouldn't look before you leap, I guess, if you're taking on such a big job is always wise. But in this case, I think, yes, I would support his taking on this job. I think he's doing it looking at the situation and doing what he can to help the party and the country. I think we should support him, and the more that we can say that we're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk about work-life balance and family values, the better it is for children everywhere.
But first, we have the elections next week, so we'll see what happens, but it looks like he's going to win. So thank you very much for coming in.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Well, Hillary Clinton's testimony took most of the day. She appeared before the House committee investigating the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. That attack left 4 Americans dead, including the U.S. ambassador.
Clinton supporters were behind her during the hearing. Democratic Representative Elijah Cummings was her most vocal defender on the committee.
So I don't know what we want from you. Do we want to badge you over and over again until you get tired, until we do get the gotcha moment that he's talking about? We're better than that.
The Republicans on the panel spoke about the grueling 11-hour day.
Appreciate Secretary Clinton coming. It was a long day for her, but she stayed to the end, and I didn't hear a single word of complaint from her. Heard a little bit from some of the other folks on the dais, but not from her.
As for what they learned after hours and hours of testimony,
I don't know that she testified that much differently today than she
2 new details came to light. In the aftermath of the Benghazi attack, Clinton sent her family an email blaming the violence on a known terrorist group. And in a phone call, she told the then Egyptian Prime Minister it was a planned attack.
Tell your family it's a terrorist attack, but not the American people. And you can tell the Egyptian Prime Minister it's a terrorist attack, but you can't tell your own people the truth.
There is no doubt in my mind that we did the best we could with the information that we had at the time.
Congress presents the highest civilian honor to a unique group who served in the last years of World War II. Although the Nazis caused great destruction throughout Europe, many artistic treasures were saved. Mark Irons has more.
There were many heroes in World War II.
It was a good job that I had.
Henry Ettlinger was part of a heroic group of treasure hunters who are now honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. Throughout Hitler's reign, the Nazis crossed Europe, stealing over 5 million works of art and culture. That's when the Allies called on hundreds of men and women from 13 nations to find the pillaged art. They became known as the Monuments Men.
Dad was prowling around Germany, locating those lost pieces.
Mark Tapper is the proud son of Bernard Tapper, one of the 6 living members. German native Henry Ettlinger fled to the U.S. before the war and then was drafted. He remembers spending 10 months in a German salt mine recovering art the Nazis hid.
They had stored 40,000 boxes of art from German institutions, and I saw to it that 900 of those boxes were taken out and put on trucks.
At the Congressional Medal ceremony, Robert Posey represented his father, Captain Posey.
They were out there to save the culture of the world. That was what we're fighting for our freedom, we were fighting for our lives, we're also fighting for our culture.
The Monuments Men legacy lives on in a book and a major motion picture.
I want people to know that they should be damn proud that we had a policy, instead of stealing things, to save it, to save the culture of countries.
It's something Captain Robert Posey's son will never forget.
Very proud indeed.
In the movie Monuments Men, Bill Murray plays a character inspired by the life of Robert Posey. And again, those treasure hunters now have a congressional gold medal of their own, Jason.
Mark, what an incredible story. Did they recover all of the stolen art?
You know, they recovered millions of pieces, including religious pieces of art. There's still a lot of works missing, but if you go to the website, monumentmenfoundation.org, you can see a list of the most wanted works.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot for that report, Mark. Appreciate it very much.
Up next, the final days of the Synod of Bishops gathering at the Vatican. A Catholic scholar weighs in on this important meeting on the family.
Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Jason Calvi. Bishops and cardinals from all over the world are wrapping up a meeting on marriage and the family. They gathered at the Vatican once again today. Pope Francis waved to reporters on his way into the Synod. Now, the Synod Fathers were able to give feedback and make changes to the final document. They'll vote on it tomorrow, and then that document will be given to Pope Francis. Stephen White is a fellow in the Catholic Studies program at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Now, Stephen, what's the takeaway of this three-week-long Synod?
Well, we'll have to see what's in the final report if we get to see it. But if you read the tea leaves, it seems like the proponents of what's widely been called the Casper proposal for communion for divorced and remarried people is probably not going to make it through into the final document. The people who were hoping for sort of sweeping change and reform are going to be likely pretty disappointed about the outcome of the Synod.
So that document will be voted on tomorrow. We might not even see it.
Right. Well, they're going to vote on it paragraph by paragraph, and for a paragraph to be included in the final document, it will have to get 2/3 of a vote from the Synod. So there's a pretty high bar, and I think the result is going to be a document that's pretty strong. It will reinforce traditional teaching on marriage and the family.
And the Synod Fathers were able to make feedback. Have you seen any thoughts on where they're kind of what else they're thinking about this document, the final document?
Yeah, well, it's funny. There have been reports out of the small groups discussions, and those are in different languages, not all of which I can read very well. But you get the general sense. You can start to piece together what's likely to be in it and what's likely not. There has been some evidence that some more progressive Catholics are a bit nervous, pretty nervous about what's going on right now. And you've even seen some people starting to talk about how, because the Synod's not going to radically change things, that this is going to be a failed Synod. You don't scuttle the ship if you think you're winning the sea battle. So I think progressives are going to be pretty unhappy with the result of the Synod, and the defenders of traditional teaching will probably be more pleased with the way things turn out.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens, but that's obviously where it looks like it's going. The Synod is ending. What did the bishops do in the next 24 hours and moving forward as well?
Well, as you already mentioned, they're going to be voting on this final document tomorrow. Well, it's late at night right now in Rome, but they'll be voting on it. And then the final document will be voted on as a whole and then sent to Pope Francis. And then they'll go back to doing what they usually do, which is running their dioceses and tending to their flocks. So
3 weeks away from home, I mean, they've got a whole bunch of emails and papers to attend to when they get back.
A lot of pasta, too.
Yeah, right. Thank you much, Stephen, for coming in. Appreciate your insights always. Thank you. Until Monday, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Jason Calvi. Good night and God bless. Thanks a lot for coming.